Counter Narrative News with a short commentary on pranking, informing, social media, clickbait, which is all related to the financialization of social media traction. So you have generally young people, increasingly, well, some young people, it's a tiny minority of young people who are conducting pranks on people, filming it, and then uploading it, try and get people to up their social media traction and then to financialize that. It's an interesting phenomenon. Now, some of this so-called social media pranks or pranks that informs social media content involves. I mean, prank is a word that is kind of a in fun trick on someone, but these aren't narrowly pranks, and one has to kind of be quite clear about what one means by prank. Some of these so-called pranks end up being quite serious. So there was a case where one young black youth in his late teens seemed to enter into other people's homes and films himself doing it. Also, he seems to be taking someone's pet dog from a public park and then running away and filming it. Now, that's not a prank, is it really? It's quite a serious violation of someone's personal space, i.e. primarily their home, and also their pet dogs, which they love often, more than their own family members or their own children. So again, it's a very unpleasant thing to do to someone, and strictly in accordance to the laws, it's breaking law. Now, this particular young black youth ended up on the show of far-right, total horrible POS, Piers Morgan, in which Piers Morgan could hardly contain his violent inner white supremacist racism, which is always bubbling just there on the surface, and Piers Morgan betrayed his own inner potent, powerful gammon nature by borderline racist abuse on this particular youngster. Now, the youngster, has to be said, while one doesn't at all condone some of his so-called pranks for his social media platforms, the youngster was actually dealt with Piers Morgan better than any other guest on Piers Morgan shows that one's ever seen. He just had no time for Piers Morgan's nonsense, no time for it all, and just proverbially slapped back intensely Piers Morgan's just utter racist rudeness. So good on the youngster for that, at least. And that brings me to another connected point. Like, most of us know when we were, around the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, just around the earlier start of our teenage, that, we did silly things to our neighbours in our communities that was generally harmless. Like, was it knock a dolly it was called? You knock on someone's door and you run away. Although the neighbour here, one of my neighbours, did inform me yesterday that in the mid-evening around 8 p.m. that he heard loud banging, and then another neighbour told him that it was some guys doing some prank, social media prank, by like kicking someone's front door. Now, while we never kicked someone's front door, I remember there was an old white lady in Southall when I was a young child. I must be about 6 years old, and just silly stuff. We called her a witch, just in our own totally small child kind of mind. And I think we kind of shouted at her or something once when she kind of opened her front door. She lived on a first or second floor around our immediate vicinity of our neighborhood. So, it's just generally harmless. And then, the more rebellious stuff starts towards your teens. I remember just walking, a couple of my friends just walking in the road, about 11 years old, just like quote unquote rude boys, walking in the road, and just, if a car got annoyed at us, would be like, what? Confrontational to the motor vehicle. Just like relatively low level rebellion. And that's the point. It's rebellion. And that this black youth, like cussing back Piers Morgan, he's defiant, he's brazen, there's an element of self-confidence there. And but then we have to understand, so what's going on here? So the right wing and the far right are obviously going to blame these young people. Now, it's easy to blame young people, isn't it? Working class young people. But let's just look at the situation that they're in for a second. Now, this is a generation that's been basically raised on screens, on iPads and phones and YouTube and online gaming. If you study these leading so-called influencers who do long commentaries on Minecraft or Roblox or all of this kind of stuff, this FNF and all this stuff that our children watch addictively, listen to the commentaries, study who they are, listen to what they're saying, and a lot of it is not conducive to the best interests of young working class people. It often adds in elements of weird sexism and misogyny, just continuous, inappropriate stuff. And then you got PewDiePie, who is another major social media influencer for younger children, basically. It's like children around 9, 10, 11, 12. You still overhear people reference him just in public spaces amongst very, very young people, around 12, 13 years old. Now, he's attached to the far right, and he constantly came out with kind of what's it called, dog whistles, quote unquote, towards the far right, and sometimes not very, some quite blatant and not very covert or subtle far right messaging. So, and then you have, all of these guys that they use commentaries on Minecraft and Roblox, etc., because it's easy social media traction. It's oriented towards children, and there's endless amounts of hundreds of millions of children who have access to devices connected to social media, who are engaging this. So these grifters, these social media influencer grifters, they want to get the views up and the traction and the comments, etc., so they can financialize it. And that's the model connected to this modern, hyper neoliberal, runaway colonial capitalist descending societal model that these young people have as they come into their young adulthood. They're a generation in which they'll never get on the property ladder, and anyway, the whole mortgage thing is a total finance capitalist racket anyway, and entrapment. But even that is out of reach now for well over a decade for people coming into their adulthood, which then pertains to unaffordable housing, overcrowded housing, bad housing that everyone is faced with, contracting, deteriorating conditions of employment, gig economy, casualization, no pension, and that whole pension growing scandal as well, again, just fleecing people out of their absolute human right to have proper care in their old age, etc. That's that's gone. And then so here you have a generation of young people entering into this society, going in this direction, being raised literally on social media, and childcare options are minimal for people who aren't very rich. So again, where's the spaces and places that are healthy and positive for these children to go in our communities that's organized? There is less and less of it, and less access to that. Leisure facilities, culture facilities, sports, all deteriorating and disappearing. Education system crumbling, negatively impacting the poorer and those who are most oppressed by societal racism. So it's no wonder then, so these children coming into their older youth and then young adulthood are thinking, well, okay, so social media and being an influencer is a career prospect. And frankly, it is, because it's the totally no employment rights, no sick, no pension, no holiday pay. I mean, that's reflective of a lot of agency work anyway that's out there. So what, you're going to work through an agency on a construction site, in an office, cleaning, delivery. Prospects are very, very, narrow, and they're narrowing. You're going to do that, or you're going to kind of control your own hours and on this social media stuff. Now, the social media grift of influencers, it breeds high anxiety and stress, because it's an endless chase after social media traction, or what they call clout. So you can't narrowly blame young people. You have to blame the society in which these powerless children are then entering and then being brainwashed into, and then living out what they've been subjected to for their entire lives on screens, which is also reflected in music as well, and other cultural mainstream forms. Now, engaging with children and young people in general in communities across London and South England mostly, I mean, you just don't, you seldom find young people and children who are doing silly social media prank, grifting, influencing stuff. It just, it generally doesn't exist. The reality and respect to young people, that in general, yes, you can see elements in which they're influenced culturally by social media, as we all are. I'm speaking to you by means of a social media colonially capitalist owned platform here right now. So it obviously impacts the way we communicate in our culture. However, to then assume that somehow this generation of young people are the worst, it's just not correct. The other thing which is interesting, a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even older, these generations of people are so quick to negatively judge young people and children today. However, if you think about what these older generations have done, well, where have they been for the last 25, 30 odd years? Where have they been since the 1980s, when everything started to fall apart, our communities became divided, privatization started to creep in all the different realms of the public service institutions, schools started deteriorating, etc. Where were they? Where were they when the political struggle, the liberation struggle, the resistance became lower and lower, and then just quickly disappeared through the 90s? These people, they can't just claim they went to a few protests and particularly and even if they particularly did something even quite bold and courageous on a few occasions, it doesn't give them then the license to kind of just sit back and be lazy and take no responsibility in our communities today, and then judge these young people who have been given no positive counter alternative to what they've been subjected to and the condition they've been put into. So just totally reject that type of just kind of like unempathetic and socially kind of like there's no social context to their critique whatsoever, and then it kind of feeds a right wing, because then it's like, well, these young people, they're just somehow just stupid or just naturally just silly. Well, they're not. So instead of judging them, why not give the wider societal context of growing oppression and exploitation that actually gives a real understanding of what's going on, and then actually better than that, and to kind of like paraphrase Marx and and the whole kind of proverbial, well, it's okay to analyze society. The point, however, is to change it for the better. So why not actually do something and directly engage with these communities to better, and then to show in actuality that's manifested in a social reality a counter alternative, a resistance to all of this nonsense that's going on. So anyway, there were just a few little comments that I thought be interesting, perhaps for audiences to hear and for me to share with you. Please feel free to give any feedback. It's always interesting hearing comments. Please do like and share and comment, and encourage your friends and your networks to subscribe to Counter Narrative News. Hope everyone's having a fantastic end of their bank holiday weekend. All the best.